now. So why is it necessary for you to speak to Her Excellency President Samia Suluhu Hassan before you make the move to return to Tanzania? Are you seeking for some type of assurance that would, so you'll be safe when you return? That guarantees your safety?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Given the circumstances of my forced departure from the country, it would be unwise for me to return back home without assurances as to my security and freedom. Yes, we have a change at the top. The president is new, but the same security forces that had harassed me for 5 years are still in place. By the way, I still face 6 criminal charges in courts in Dar es Salaam. These are completely preposterous cases which were levied on me purely for political reasons, and they're still in place. And we have called on the president to show us a hand of friendship by at least giving me and my fellow exiles security assurances. And thus far, as I have said, we are still waiting. So as I say, it will not be wise to return home in the absence of those security assurances.
Now, talking about the incident that made you go on exile in the first place, the ugly incident of the assassination attempt on your life. You also had 22 surgeries post-recovery in order to get back to where you are today. Are you satisfied with the conduct of the investigations? Because I remember back then the late President Magufuli did tweet and said those perpetrators will be brought to justice. What's the latest on that?
Before I answer that question, let me just correct you a little on the subject of my treatment. I had my 25th surgery 2 weeks ago, so I'm basically still recovering from the 25th surgery. I still have one more to go in September, so that would make it number 26. Now, to the question of investigation of the assassination attempt. The truth of the matter is the attack has never been investigated. Never, not at all. The official position of the police force of Tanzania is that they do not even have a suspect. They don't suspect anybody of being involved in an assassination attempt carried out inside a heavily guarded government housing compound in the midst of a parliamentary session. They do not have any suspect in respect of an attack on a very prominent parliamentary leader. And these are the kind of excuses that have made it, if they don't have a suspect, of course they cannot investigate. To start an investigation, you need a lead. You need to have at least somebody that you suspect. They don't have a suspect. They have never arrested any single individual. They have never interviewed anybody, not me, not my driver, not the people who were in that building and who took me to hospital. And so the assassination attempt was never investigated.
What about CCTV images? I mean, this is a heavily fortified housing gated community where the speaker, other parliamentarians and senior members of government live. How is it possible that in broad daylight, 1 p.m. if I'm not mistaken, lunch hour, they drive through, all those things happen and not a single footage?
Actually, that's a great question. There were CCTV footage that was recovered from the scene of the crime. And 5 days after the attack, the police force admitted in public that they had recovered the CCTV footage. but the police has never, ever told the nation what was in that footage. And then 2 years later, the then Minister for Home Affairs told Parliament that there was actually no CCTV footage. So we have a contemporaneous statement by the police 5 days after the attack, saying that they have recovered the CCTV footage, and then 2 years later, the government minister in charge of the police force says, there was no CCTV of any kind. It's just a way of covering up this heinous crime. As you say, how can it happen in a government housing compound where ministers and members of parliament live for this attack to take place? I would like you to know that, in fact, the security was removed completely from the compound. You can never gain access to the compound because it is guarded 24/7. That day, that afternoon, there was no security anywhere. And therefore, it was just planned. It was just planned. And what happened after the attack proves that this was just a government assassination attempt ordered by the president. There was a parliamentary investigation which was discontinued on the day that the Parliamentary Committee on Security was to give a report to Parliament about
sorry to interject there, Mr. Lissu. Yeah. You're a former president of the Tanzanian Bar Association. You're a lawyer, and you do know the implication of what the statement you just made now, saying the late president ordered the assassination. Do you have any evidence to prove this?
Let me explain myself here, and I know what I'm talking about. 2 hours before I was shot, the president was on national television and addressing the nation. And in his address, he stated that those who opposed his so-called economic war did not deserve to survive. Now, at that time, at that point in time, I was the leading opponent of his government's economic policies. And therefore, when he said that those who opposed his economic war did not deserve to survive, he was directly referring to me. And 2 hours later, these hired assassins were allowed into this government housing compound and tried to kill me. And then I say that the police recovered CCTV footage. We don't know where it ended. And then Parliament investigated the attack. And on the day the Parliamentary Committee on Security and Defense was to present its report to Parliament, it was yanked out of the program, and its chairperson and the members of the committee were dispersed. And then several months later, the clerk of the National Assembly wrote me, I have it in writing, that the government, I cannot be treated with taxpayers' money because the President Magufuli, has not authorized the payment for my treatment.
But as an MP, as an MP, you are entitled to treatment by the government. The government was meant to fit your bill.
Exactly. I'm probably the only MP who has been treated the way I was treated. And I have it in writing from the clerk of the National Assembly that it is the president who prevented me from getting my statutory medical benefits. And there are all these facts, if you look at them in their totality. What other conclusion can one reasonably arrive at, if not that the government of President Magufuli and the president himself had a hand in the attempted assassination?
Now, Mr. Lisu, when you eventually, if you eventually get to have an audience with President Samia Suluhu Hassan, will these be some of the issues on the card that you would like to discuss with her? Because you went through a lot of personal trauma and grief just going through all of that. Or would you let bygones be bygones? Because the man you accused of ordering the assassination is no longer alive today.
That's a great question, my brother. Let me let you know that, in fact, I have stated publicly that now that she's the president, President Samia Suluhu Hassan has the opportunity to tell the Tanzanian people what exactly happened, who was behind the attempted assassination. And here is why. Of all the government leaders during that time, Samia Suluhu Hassan is the only government leader who ever visited me in hospital. She came to see me when I was hospitalized for 4 months.
Even though
Nairobi.
She was in the ruling party? Even though she's a member of the ruling party?
Not just in the government, but also in the ruling party. And people have told me, people from within the government and the ruling party have told me that they were told by Magufuli himself that he would like to see who will go to visit me in hospital in Nairobi. So all these people who would have otherwise visited me in hospital were threatened not to dare come to Nairobi. Now, Samia Suluhu Hassan is the only one who came. Now, I have also said in public that an assassination attempt of a prominent political leader cannot just be wished away. We need truth about what happened, if for no other reason than to make sure that the truth is known so that these kinds of dastardly acts are not repeated again. And therefore, I cannot let bygone be bygone without the truth. We
and
want
also justice
to be told
and
the
posterity,
truth.
justice and posterity.
Yes.
Now let's move on
Absolutely.
to politics. They say a house divided cannot stand on itself. There were divisions within the ruling CCM party. Do you see the former president's backers, late President John Magufuli, posing a serious threat to President Suluhu Hassan by undermining authority? And as the vice chairman of the opposition party, are you willing to exploit these divisions?
First of all, I don't think there are any divisions within the ruling party to speak of. At least I've not seen any evidence of the divisions you refer to. Secondly, those who backed President Magufuli have been, in my view, totally discredited with the kind of revelations that are now coming out into the open, some of them at the behest of the new president, about what really happened behind the scenes during the Magufuli years. Basically, in short, senior government figures senior figures in the security forces and in the regional administration were given a carte blanche to carry out murder and mayhem. Now, these things are coming out in the open, and I think Magufuli and his legacy will be totally tarnished. Those who backed him are on the defensive. His legacy, if there ever was any, is in tatters. I don't think they pose any threat to President Samia Suluhu Hassan as such.
Talking about
as to what we will do, we in the opposition and my party in particular, I think all we have asked the new president to do is to remove the illegal ban on political activity that was imposed in 2016 by the then President Magufuli. We just want to do normal political party in a normal political activity in a normal democratic society. We are not demanding for anything that is not provided for by Tanzanian law. We just want that. We just want democracy.
Now, talking about the legacy of the former President John Pombe Magufuli, commentary from all over the world and political commentators within Tanzania and the East Africa region is always polarized when you look at the legacy of the former president. Some said he was a champion against corruption. They call him the bulldozer, that he was able to take on multinational corporations, especially in the mining industry, that were ripping Tanzania off and weren't paying enough royalties. Do you see any positives in his legacy, or you can never see any good in the former president?
There is absolutely nothing positive of the Magufuli's toxic legacy. And let me explain this. The so-called war on corruption was nothing short of mafia-style shakedown of the business community. All that Magufuli wanted was money, to get money to finance his white elephants, to finance his petty projects. And the people with money are the business community. So Magufuli went after the business community big time. Hundreds of business people were framed up with horrendous economic crimes, with money laundering, with corruption, with tax evasion, and not a single one of them has ever been proved in a court of law to have committed any of those horrendous crimes.
But the money recovered went back to the state coffers to help with infrastructure projects. And you did mention that some of these projects are white elephants. Why do you say so?
They are white elephants precisely because they are white elephants. These are the kind of projects which are very impressive on sight, but if you scratch a little, you scratch the surface a little, if you query their economic rationale, there is none. The country has been set